according to some reports today, police have been unable to see what the Southport killer, Axel Rudakabana, was searching for online before his attack on a children's dance class last summer. They're locked in a lengthy US legal process at the moment to obtain that data from Google and Microsoft. It begs the question, what should police be able to access from our online lives? And why do tech companies clearly disagree? Let's speak to Dal Babua, who's former Chief Superintendent for Met Police. Dal, hello, good evening.
Hello.
Thank you for being with us. Help us understand the process that you go through. You're a police officer. You come across a suspect. You want to try to understand more about what they were searching for, trying to piece together perhaps a motive for a crime. How does that work from your perspective?
You make a request to the tech company. They have a specific department that's help and assist policing and security services. I think if the information is encrypted and you have different platforms, different levels of encryption, then it becomes more and more difficult. And it looks like it's not quite straightforward. So what we may have had with Rubicon is his searches might have been encrypted. He may have deleted them, so they're not entirely obvious. So the police will probably need some assistance from the tech companies to uncover what those searches were.
Right, okay. What for you then, Dal, meets the threshold? How do you know when a crime is committed whether you need to access that kind of information?
I mean, when you have a murder, when you have a serious offence like this, you would expect that the tech companies would have an understanding of the importance of sharing information in a timely manner, because when you've had somebody commit such horrific offences, you want to be sure that there is no other potential victims there. There are no other potential co-defendants. So you'd want to find that information. So in some ways, it does appear to be common sense for the tech companies to say, look, this is information that relates to a serious crime that has related to, sadly, the loss of three girls' lives. We need to share that information at the earliest opportunity. There's a huge difference between that and the police going on a fishing expedition and just asking for information generally. There's certainly, and I could understand how we need checks and balances to make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay.
But when you're trying to information where murder has been committed and you want to be confident that you've got all the information and you may need to protect other people or there may other people outstanding, you'd expect the tech companies to cooperate.
Okay, Mike Isaac, from the technology correspondent for the New York Times. That request is made by the police in the United Kingdom or the US. The tech companies receive it. What happens next?
So yeah, the tech companies sort of receive. First of all, they receive a lot of requests because if you're a company, let's say like Meta, which owns Facebook or Instagram, you serve, more than basically almost half the world. They're going to receive requests from governments around the world, law enforcement agencies around the world. So they have these departments, as your other guest said, where they basically evaluate how legitimate those requests are. And it really can run the gamut. There are some folks who are, as your guest said, looking on a fishing expedition, just don't really have a pointed request. Or they can be like, this is a crime is committed. We need this very specific type of data for this reason. And the companies can sort of evaluate that and see if they think it's overreach or if they want to cooperate, basically.
And you followed a case like this, didn't you? Where there was a shoot. Actually, one of the elements of Axel Radikana's sort of concern around him in the lead up to this was his searching of school shootings and school massacres. He seemed to have a fascination with that and an interest in it. That's one of the things that flagged him to the authorities in the first place. You followed the story of a shooting of that type and the sort of tussle afterwards with the tech companies.
That's right. In 2015-ish, I was covering this case in California between Apple and the FBI, where there was a sort of an attack on a school in San Bernardino. The shooter killed a lot of people and then killed himself. And part of the tussle essentially was the FBI asking for this encrypted data on the shooter's
Mike, just a
iPhone.
quick point, so I'm supposed to interrupt. We're just having a little bit of a rustling problem with your microphone. I don't know if your microphone's catching on your lapel or catching on your...
It is my shirt. Tell me if this is better.
That's much better. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Apologize for that. And so, essentially Apple was saying this is encrypted data. This is an iPhone. We don't have access to encrypted data, nor do we want to attempt to hand it over. And it really was a standoff. And I think, it was this point of contention where that showed that the tech companies draw certain lines, especially around encrypted data, because they frankly just don't want to be able to break that and set a precedent for themselves where they can in the future, basically.
Right, okay. And so they're very clearly worried about privacy, aren't they, and protecting people's online lives. Dal, do you automatically have a right to access somebody's online life?
No, there are restrictions. There's human rights. There's privacy, and I think most people would understand that. I think the difference is when you've got a crime, when you, for example, in Southport, when you've got three girls, innocent girls, murdered by this man. I think most people, common sense would dictate that the authorities would say, right, we want to help you. We want to provide all the data that we can at the earliest opportunity. I think what we're seeing is a sort of battle between the States and Europe, where the States is a free for all, where you have horrific videos, terrorist videos, videos on how to make ricin, which this suspect had made, videos on death and horrific videos that are not taken down, terrorism videos that remain because people believe in, some people in these tech companies believe in absolute freedom of speech. And then the European version is more about restrictions and making sure that you protect people. So I think this will be a battle, but it makes it much more difficult for the police and the security services to deal with issues where quite horrific content is made available, and you have people who are vulnerable or just have a very very pernicious and nasty streak in them, who will use that to commit offences. So and I think we just really need to have this debate with the security companies and say, well, what do the public want and what are you doing? Why aren't you helping the security services? Most people would be pretty shocked to hear that there's a tussle going on between British policing and the tech companies to try and get this information.